Hashem's Masai Tzibtach Uviagitila Sacha. We're now in the 11th parak, the second to last parak of Daniel. This parak is very detailed, very long parak, a lot of esoteric ideas, all of which we're probably not going to fully understand because the Mefarshim spent a lot of time debating about this parak and what it actually refers to. And so, instead of doing that, let's see if we can find a few hidden messages within the parak in order for us to really recognize what the goal is of this parak. So Gabriel is speaking, and he's referring to the idea that it was his job to help to fight against, remember, Daryavish, the Mede, and now we have to understand that after him, there are going to be more kings. We have the Daryavish, we have Cyrus, and we have Achashverosh. And the very wealthy one is going to be Achashverosh, perhaps, again, up for debate. But ultimately, what's going to happen is that they are going to rise up, and there's going to be this kingdom of Greece, and the kingdom of Greece is going to dominate and take over them. And so ultimately, what you have is this idea, is that nothing can stop the history from unfolding. And so now we're going to go through Malchus Yavan. Now, what's interesting is that Ba'ata Melech Gibor Mashal Rav Asa Kirtzono. There's going to be this warrior king, and he, Alexander the Great, is going to do everything that he pleases. He is going to be unstoppable. Now, Ke'amdo Tishaber Machuso, but then what ultimately is going to transpire is that he too is going to come and go, and his kingdom is going to be split into four. And it's not going to be for posterity. Again, we have this idea of the limits of mankind, and that even the strong, with all of their strength and all of their money, they're not able to wither the storm when Hashem puts it in their way. And it doesn't matter how strong Alexander the Great is. At the age of 32, he's done. And when he's done, his kingdom, that amazing kingdom, gets broken apart. Also, one would never imagine that is to be the case, because it seemingly is that he's on top of the world. But ultimately, as we've mentioned many a times, you can be on top of the world, but ultimately you go down into the world and you get buried. And he couldn't withhold death. And so then it's going to go through this up and down of some northern kings and southern kings, and as they make an agreement with Egypt, and then the king decides that, you know what, it's not a good idea. I have to really trick Egypt. And so ultimately he, after this back and forth and a great army, one tries to war against the other, and the south wants to, and this idea of one Antiochus and another Antiochus. I guess the idea really is that what's happening is that there's a weakening because there is civil war. There is, within the dominion of what used to be one, now there's the north against the south. Now, we have said many a times that really, what is that highlighting? Well, it's highlighting the idea of Sinas Chinam. It's highlighting the idea that we're going to get to, which is, if we do not be together, and if we have divisiveness, then ultimately we just create the reality that doesn't allow for us to be able to have HaKadosh Baruch Hu in our life in a way that is going to benefit us. And so ultimately, this, again, why do we care? So first of all, we care because we get to see Yad of Hashem. And through every single one of these interpretable, historical, significant things, we can understand that HaKadosh Baruch Hu sends each and every piece, and we have the refuah before the makkah. We have everything set in place so that we can ultimately survive. And perhaps that is part of it. The other part is that when Hashem wants someone to do well, they do well. When Hashem doesn't want them to do well, they won't. And it's oftentimes easier to go through the annals of history and to recognize, oh, so that's what happened to that old northern kingdom. Oh, so the lawlessness, really didn't help the southern kingdom. As a way really to suggest that we have to look within ourselves. And HaKadosh Baruch Hu knows mankind and human nature. And that is not in any way, shape, or form that we accept willingly. Shame or the idea that that we've done something wrong. And so ultimately what happens is that there's this idea that ultimately, along with the north and the south, that we get to Antiochus Epiphanes, and Vaya'as haba elav kirtzono, and so his opponent did whatever he pleased. Ve'ein omed lefanav, no one could hold out against him. Ve'amud be'eretz tzvi, and so ultimately Antiochus takes over Eretz Tzvi, which is Eretz Yisrael, v'chala biyado, and destroys us. Now, why is it called Eretz HaTzvi? Why is it the land of the deer? Why are we referred to the deer? So something with the deer, that the skin stretches, so too, Eretz Yisrael will exceed its borders. But the idea also is the Eretz HaTzvi is Tzivayon, which is the desired one. That HaKadosh Baruch Hu always desires Eretz Yisrael more than any other. And that it, unlike, which is a beautiful idea, that unlike other nations that are just called Mitzrayim and Bavel, we always have the reference of the Eretz. Why? Because it just shows again from the word, the same thing from the Ratzon, which is that Hashem just desires Eretz Yisrael. He loves us so. It is His desired land. And so if we are able to be zocha to that land, then we get the land, and it is very wonderful. And if we're not, then it's taken away from us. And so Vayasab Panav Labo Bakosef Kol Machuso Yisharim Im Vayas Va'asab Bas Hanashim. So He's going to send throughout the land and destroy. And it's again, we go through again. We're in the crosshairs of other wars that are going on, and it is Vayasha Panav Ze Artso. He goes back into his own land. He's going to stumble. He's going to fall, and he's going to vanish. And so again, what we give credence to, the strength of the mightiest might, doesn't last unless HaKadosh Baruch Hu wants it to last. And so, that is one of the most important parts of the parak in discussing all of how the mighty falls. And the understanding is that through that, there is, some say that it refers to the idea of the different rulers. Very, very importantly, there is that after the ruler Antiochus falls by the hands of the Hashmonaim, we could have something that would be wonderful. That would be amazing, that we were able to break through. But unfortunately, that isn't the case. And why is that not the case? So first of all, we didn't do enough. We were not good enough in terms of the capability that we had to really rally together and keep to the mitzvos, and we didn't really make that true demonstration of what Hashem had wanted. But more than that is the Hashmonaim, they took a role that was not theirs. What does that mean? That HaKadosh Baruch Hu says that the role of the king was going to go only to Shevet Yehuda. And so while they were dominant and they did a great job in what we wanted them to do, ultimately, when they were able to win and be victorious and then clean up the Beis HaMikdash, you know what they did? They kept it. They kept the job. But the job wasn't theirs to be kept. And as a result, again, when you play God, or when you give yourself more than you actually deserve to be given, it's a problem. And so ultimately it becomes a real problem. And so it doesn't last. And the idea of being able to come back to Eretz Yisrael and to rebuild the Beis HaMikdash was not one that could ever fully last, unfortunately. And it doesn't, and they ultimately are punished because they they took care to take a position that really wasn't theirs. Now, after that, we have the idea and the machlokas of the idea of now when Rome comes on the scene. So Rome, Christianity, Islam, those are elements, like in Psukim 31 to 35, it's really describing perhaps to some as Christianity. They destroyed the Beis HaMikdash. There's the Asara Harugei Malchus. In Pasuk 34, it's a reference to Beitar. In references 36 to 39, it talks about Christianity. And so we're, again, this is our life. Our life is filled with kings who the Asak Kirtzano Hamelach V'Yitzramim V'Yiskadel Al Kol Kel. So, or Al Kol El, depending on how you interpret it. But ultimately, what's the bottom line? So who is this Melech that's in reference to 36? So some say that it's Constantine. Constantine, who takes over the Christian empire, develops, and in Christianity, changes the trajectory of the world forevermore. Or you can say, V'asak Kirtzono HaMelech is the Melech is HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And he's going to put into place again the punishment for the society, a society that's going to go to the idea of Christianity. And then perhaps if that's the case, then if you look at the next pasuk, the El Eloha Avosab Lo Yavin. And he doesn't go back onto what his ancestors said. Vel Chamdas Nashim Bal Kol Eloha Lo Yavin. And they also don't go with women. The idea of the celibacy, nuns and monks and people that take on. So they're changing the trajectory of what society views as pure and impure. And that again points to the idea, perhaps it's a mita k'neged mita. Why is it that, that this is happening? Well, were we careful with our mitzvos of, of adultery, gilui arayos, shvichas damim, avodah zarah? Were we? Well, when we weren't, what happens to society? When the light of society falls apart, so too the fabric of what society stands for falls apart. All of a sudden, they're up to the Trinity. Where did we get that from? So, we added perhaps, the idea of, taking on avodah zarah in whatever form it is, whatever it is that we are subservient to, depending on the generation. But for that reason, okay, you're taking on a new God, so too now the world has Trinity. And you are not being careful in the relationships that you have with one another or within your home. So now the world has this idea of celibacy and nuns and monks and all that. And so it's really a reflection of where we're going down. As we go down, society gets corrupted and they go worse. And so ultimately, that's, then you can also interpret after that this idea of, if we go Be'ez Kates, so at the end of time. So now we're going to understand that perhaps this is talking about Islam. And, now we've added another element. And these are very dangerous people. Melech HaNegev, these are they lock horns. And they invade and they sweep through like a flood. And how many of them are there? And we've had forevermore this idea. So we have Christianity, we have Islam, we have how powerful they are and how they brought into the world some really bad versions of what ultimately was from, and they're from nothing. And to understand that all of this is just part of the annals of history for us to recognize. We have the ability to look at it because hindsight is 20/20, and so it's a very precarious situation that we find ourselves in. And the last few psukim, again, not to go into the details, but there's going to come to Eretz Tzvi Rabos Yakashlu, and many are going to fail, and Edom, Moab, Ammon, and ultimately. And Mitzrayim, exactly what that's referring to, but the idea of Gog and Magog, that there's going to come a time where there's going to be this great, great big war. And from that, there will come a time of Zman Mashiach. Now, why ultimately do we have to go through all this? We have to go through this so that we can understand, A, what our job is, what we're supposed to do to correct things. We're supposed to be an Or LaGoyim. We're supposed to have an understanding of world history so that where we can do better. Number B is that we can see the Yad of Hashem. We can really understand, wow, look how that happens. We can have more bitachon in Hashem because even the mighty falls, that those people, those forces that we give credence to, they're not real, and it's much, much easier for us to see it in other people. But ultimately, it's also important to recognize that Hashem made promises. He promised to Avraham, He promised to generations, He's given visions, and those promises don't only include the negative, but they include the positive. And so if we dig deep in our avodas Hashem and our emunah, we can do exactly what Rabbi Akiva did. When he saw the fox that was running through the rubble of the Beis Hamikdash, he laughed because he recognized, wow, so if that could happen, then this can happen. And that's really where we can leave this parak. We can leave this parak believing, wait, all of that happened. That was actually Nebuah, and it all happened. Daniel didn't know it was going to happen. So if he can be given something that really came true, like that magic trick that really looks magical. So Kal V'chomer, or I guess it allows for us that recognition, yes, Hashem can do anything, and He promised we're going to have a Mashiach. He promised that everything is going to get better, and that we're going to look back and laugh and see that everything was Yad of Hashem. But ultimately, we've been given a gift. The gift is the proof that we need intellectually, perhaps, in order to help our emotionality, which is that Hashem, it was forecasted, and so far, everything happened. So too, we can believe, B'emunah Shalema, that there's going to come a time for Mashiach, and we don't have to wait long. We just have to improve so that He can bring it. And like we said, either it's going to be a slow process that He comes on a donkey and looks like a poor guy, or He can come in a cloud. He can whisk us away. He can come be'ita achishena. He can come quickly and speedily. B'mhira b'yaminu, it should come true.